Hey, Renter Retires, it's Adam Schroeder here with another episode, joined by the founder and CEO of Renter Retirement, Zach Lemaster. And we have two things we want to talk about today, so we won't talk your ear off for too long. But the first thing we want to talk about is inventory, because a lot of people have been seeing that rents have been stalling in some markets. There are some markets in the country where rents have decreased a little bit over the last year. And so people think, this is going to be a continuous problem. Well, guess what, Zach? In over 60% of the major cities in the country, permits for multifamily housing are below where they were pre-pandemic. That's and we all know when inventory drops, rents, what do they do? They what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, they go up. That's what I'm looking for. So it's almost like builders are very temperamental to what's going on in the market today. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah, and Adam, I think back about when you used to use a term saying that rents are usually sticky, and it's very difficult or very unusual for rents to go down or fluctuate. And this is speaking to what we've seen over the past, 12 to 18 months. And this is all market dependent, of course, but we actually have seen some rents fluctuate. And really, guys, at the end of the day, the U.S. is a very diverse market. There's a lot of different places you can invest. Each place might be different and better for the next person or different investors for different reasons, right? But generally speaking, most economics are driven by supply and demand. And that's exactly what Adam is talking about right now is we don't see an immediate difference in supply and demand in real estate. It's a slow moving target and cycle, both from people that are looking to buy houses, but also new construction starts. And new construction starts, what Adam has been saying, has decreased dramatically. But we don't see that effect immediately, and so it takes some time for that to actually come to fruition. But there's been very, very few times where rents have decreased throughout our history, and even price points. Actually, I mean, we were looking at statistics the other day to show out of the past 7 or 8 recessions that we've had as a country. Market corrections and recessions, real estate prices have only dropped, I think, during 3 of those, 2 of them being throughout the 2008, 2011 period. So I'm going off on some tangents, but I think my point is that supply and demand drives everything, right? And if you want to be in a market where you're going to have increased rents and increased home prices, you want to look at areas that have an undersupply of housing, but you want to be conscious about the construction starts in an area and the population changes that will have an effect 6 to 12 months down the line, instead of looking at the immediate trends today, which is the painful thing. If you have a house and you're like, oh, my rent, I anticipated $1,600 and it's coming in at $1,525, and you're having that's just immediate today. There's more availability. That doesn't mean that, that's always going to be the case. And I guess what we're telling you is it's very rare to see rents fluctuate and change, but we have over the past year. But we're likely starting to see, because of the decrease in construction starts, likely a reduction in limitation of supply, which should lead to rents increasing over time. So
Yeah,
that was a very long-winded answer, Adam, to say, yeah, I agree.
yeah. So I mean, if you think about it, though, I mean, I think it was whenever we looked, maybe 2 years ago. I think it was in the last 60 years, rents had dropped in 2 of those years or something like that. It was a very, very small amount. And it's important for people to realize, even if overall rents drop, let's just say 2% this year across the country, we saw a 20% increase during the pandemic. So if you average it out over, the last 6 years, you're still averaging, probably 4% or so per year per market, for each of your homes. And so, you take a little bit of hit this year. I understand if you just close on a house, it doesn't really matter. But here's the good news. If you bought a property that even a year ago, let's say it was at 1,600, like Zach was saying, and today it's at 1,525, the market has already shown you that it can support a $1,600 rent. It's not like you're going in there and saying, man, it would be great if, income in this area went up and they could afford a $1,600 rent. The market's showing you they can afford a $1,600 rent. Just right now with more supply, it's only getting 1,525. But as soon as that supply goes down in a year, whenever you renew, or in 2 years, whenever you renew, 1,600 is a very, very viable number that you can look to get on that property. So just know as you go in, yes, right now, this second, it might not be exactly what you're hoping for, but it's going to come back around. And apparently it's coming back around real soon, not in 5, 6, 7 years. So
And this isn't a doom gloom type of thing. We're just, pointing out trends that we're seeing in the market. And we eat, breathe, and sleep real estate every single day across the country. And so we're bringing, trends that we're seeing to the forefront. There's plenty of markets that don't have any rent corrections, but this is one of these rare times that we are seeing a little bit. And this isn't a huge thing. It's not like rents are tanking. We're still in a high inflationary environment. Which helps to increase rents over time, right? Cost of living across the board just increases, but really the biggest factor is supply and demand. And that's, I think, the point that Adam's trying to make. And I love that you looped in the why behind this, because this is true for home prices as well. Like during the period of 2020 through mid 2022, before we had this crazy increase in interest rates, like we probably experienced 5 to 10 years. That's a little aggressive. Maybe I would say 4 to 6 years of appreciation in home prices and rents within like 2 years. And so really what that means is now this is like a leveling off and cooling off period because there was such increase during that period of time. Now, a lot of people are calling for, real estate crashes, and that's been something people have been talking about for a decade now, and that hasn't happened. Again, supply and demand. We still have an extreme supply in the U.S. That's about to get worse with the reduction in home starts, which Adam has pointed out. But really, it's just a leveling off from the craziness that we've seen a few years ago. But we're starting to see the trend recorrect. So all that being said, don't sweat it if you have a little bit of fluctuation in rents. That is a point in time. And if you're in an area where the population is generally growing, I think you'll be well positioned. Like the key takeaway here is obviously still have fundamentals, buy positively cash flowing properties. It's still a good time to invest. It's still a good time to make strategic moves before the market turns around. But if your rents are fluctuating right now, just know if you're investing in the right locations, you will probably be well positioned to increase rents quite a bit over the next six to 12 months. And that's what we're planning with our own internal investing. In fact, we're trying to stagger leases or even sign shorter leases in some cases so we can be well positioned to take advantage of that. Hey everyone, it's Zach Lemaster, CEO of Rent to Retirement, the nation's leading turnkey investment company. Over 800 of our investors have already joined the Rent to Retirement Academy, where they've learned how to buy their first or next investment properties in 90 days or less. Academy members are averaging 4 properties per year using creative strategies to fast-track financial freedom. We teach you everything you need to know to be a successful investor from A to Z, including private lending, short-term note strategies, how to protect your assets, how to maximize tax benefits, everything you need to know to help you maximize your returns across the board. Plus, Academy members become immediate referral partners where you earn up to $1,000 per property that your referrals buy for life on every investment property purchase from all of your referrals. Last year, we paid over $160,000 to our top Academy referral partner. Our Academy enrollment is closing after the next 20 signups, and right now there's an exclusive 50% discount only available for the next 5 days. So to learn how you can join our exclusive Academy program today to fast track your success, click the link below, and we'll see you on the inside. Thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I just offered one of my tenants a 20-month lease so that I could, kind of ride. If you think about how long construction takes, it's a longer cycle. So, we offered a 20-month lease, number one, to get us closer to the summertime whenever we really want to be leasing. But, it never hurts. And you can always tell your tenant, oh, look what you're locking in. So, it's definitely a good option to consider whenever you're going in and, maybe you're closing in October and you're looking to do an 18-month lease just to kind of protect yourself potentially on the property. But, if you're keeping the tenant, then, 12 months at a time is absolutely fine. So I want to go in now to home purchases. And this is something that I think is really important for investors to think about, because every property that you're going to buy, you have to put down earnest money. And across the country right now, we're seeing an increase in owner-occupied buyers canceling contracts because they start getting worried about interest rates. They start getting worried about, like what Zach was saying, oh, doom and gloom. It's all the prices are going to plummet, which guess what? They're not in most markets and nearly all markets. But there's a couple of important caveats here. Number one is when owner occs back out, it gives investors an opportunity to come in and purchase these properties. But also, it tells you people are still freaking out about interest rates. So if you don't freak out about interest rates, if you look at the numbers today and see a return that you can live with, it's a good time to get in there and buy the properties that wouldn't be available on any other one. But then the other thing I want to say is it's showing you that people are probably losing money because they don't read the contracts before they sign them. Earnest money, remember people, the reason you put down earnest money is because builders, rehabbers, owner occupied people who are looking to sell their homes are taking their homes off of the market and not accepting other deals. So that money is very much, they're not just going to give it back for no reason. They're thinking, okay, they put down $5,000. I'm keeping this if they don't follow their contract. And so in today's market, it is extremely important to read the contract and see exactly when you can back out, why you can back out, and know that if you don't back out for those reasons and in those timeframes, you might be losing your earnest money. And I think, Zach, that's something that not enough owner-occupieds especially are thinking about whenever they're going under contract. I wouldn't be surprised if millions of dollars are being kept in earnest money by sellers.
Yeah, and this is something we should do more of, is just like general real estate transactional education. Obviously, having good representation in the transaction is important. But if you're working, often if you're an investor working directly with the builder, like that's getting a discount on the property. Part of that discount may be because there's not agents involved. And so this is just being a savvy investor of understanding like general real estate concepts and contracts. So we'll probably try to do more of these general education things. But here's the deal with earnest money. And the reason we're bringing this up is because there's been some headline news recently about like, yes, contract cancellations being at an all-time high, and some really unsophisticated buyers, losing earnest money and not anticipating that, whether they have agents involved or not. And I think the reason people are canceling, as Adam illustrated nicely, is because the concern and about the market and things like that. So we just naturally see that. But to be a savvy investor, just know earnest money, like Adam said, like that has real consequences to the seller if you don't actually close on the property. You're making a commitment to go through due diligence. Generally speaking, earnest money, and it can range. We've seen earnest money as low as like 1 or 2% up to as high as 10%, depending on the deal structure. Again, if you're buying, say, a new construction house where you're getting this really good deal on the house, like part of that is the seller may want a higher commitment that you have a higher likelihood of closing the deal. And so they may require a higher earnest money. Generally speaking, most contracts protect your earnest money with 3 different contingencies: appraisal, financing, and inspection. And each one of those have timelines. It's not like a contingency is, you can't go 45 days into the contract and the day before closing say, I'm going to cancel, because you need to pay attention to the contingencies and the timeline for your earnest money. And you also need to cancel appropriately. We've heard of some people saying, like, I just don't want the house anymore. Well, that's not canceling for a legitimate contingency, right? So a financing contingency is, you have to have a pre-approval letter going into it. But if things change and you can't get the loan on the property with your anticipated lender, then you may have ability to cancel, again, within a set timeline, and receive your earnest money back. That's important to read through the contract to understand. This is probably one of the most important things to read in the contract. And not the average person is not going to read a, 10 to 20 page purchase agreement and understand everything in there. But this is something, the first thing I would know before you arbitrarily sign a contract. The next is the inspection contingency. Usually you're required to have an inspection done within a period of time, 10, 15 days into the contract, and you have to object to certain things you've seen in the inspection. And you also have to, here's the caveat. Most contracts require, you can't just say, hey, I got this in inspection report and there's all these things I want fixed. I want out. In a lot of cases, you may need to give the seller the opportunity to make those repairs, right? So you have the inspection report, you have all the things that are issues, and then you provide that to the seller and say, hey, I want all these things fixed. They can either agree to fix those items, and then you can't technically get out of the contract. They have to, and you can re-inspect after they do that. So an inspection contingency, it's usually a short period of time. Understand you still have to give the seller the ability to make those right. The financing, and then appraisal. And appraisal is pretty black and white. Either the home appraises or it doesn't. And so here's just a little thing to think about, is like the financing contingency is probably your best bet to cancel if you're going to cancel, to have the highest chance of getting your earnest money back. But you'll likely need a letter from the lender saying you can't qualify for financing, even though you were able to qualify in the beginning. So this is just a little bit of education for buyers out there, something to be conscious about. We don't see this a ton with our investors because something we try to educate them on. But like Adam said, there's a ton of, this is like one of the highest percentages of cancellations we've seen as an industry. And that's mainly owner occupied, but something to be aware of.
90% of real estate investors miss key tax savings by overlooking deductions. Flipping houses, managing rentals, or growing your real estate empire? Make sure you've got experts in your corner, especially when it comes to taxes. That's why we turned to Nevada Corporate Headquarters, the experts who help us reduce taxes and set up our real estate LLCs. With 35 plus years of experience and 17,000 five-star reviews, Nevada Corporate Headquarters helps you manage properties across states, navigate tax laws, and protect your assets, all with a real estate LLC. Visit nchinc.com/RTR to schedule a free real estate LLC formation and tax consultation. Plus, receive a free guide to safeguarding your assets. Looking for a smarter way to manage your rentals? With HEMLANE, you get everything you need to self-manage without giving up your time and peace of mind. Thanks to your partnership with Rent to Retirement, you can advertise on top sites like Zillow, Apartments.com, and more, automate rent collection and lease tracking, and access 24/7 repair coordination and support services. Whether you're just getting started or scaling your portfolio, HEMLANE grows with you. And right now, Rent to Retirement investors get 25% off for 2 months when you subscribe onto the platform using the link in the show notes. Yeah, so whenever you're going to cancel, it's like we always tell people, if you're going to cancel, you need to come back and say, I'm canceling because of Section 8, Part A, or something like that. And like Zach said, you can usually, if you just go to them and say, I decided I don't want the house anymore, well, you're likely going to lose your money. But thankfully, that's kind of why we're here, is to help you make sure that you are fully committed to the property. You do have that pre-approval so your financing can go through, and you have everything lined up, ready to go. You also want to check the appraisal contingency, because sometimes it might say you're responsible for the first, this isn't with us, but you're responsible for the first $10,000 over the appraised value. And then, then after that, they'll negotiate or something like that. Obviously, there were times during the pandemic where people were just flat out scratching out the appraisal contingency. So they were responsible for everything. Thankfully, we're not in that environment right now anymore, but just know if you do that, you're giving up stuff. So you need to read the contract and know exactly why, if you're purchasing a property. So
yeah, this is just part of being a sophisticated buyer, guys. And, regardless, you do not ever want, whether you have agents and brokers involved or not, like at the end of the day, this is your money, your investment, and this is part of your education, right? So you are the responsible party to understand what your obligations in the contracts are, what your outs are, what the obligations of the seller are. Like Adam mentioned, in a seller's market, like in a multiple offer scenario, you may be making an offer where there are no contingencies. And so you need to be prepared to close on that deal or lose your earnest money, right? Potentially. So fortunately, we're not in a seller's market so much right now, where there's all sorts of that chaos, but that doesn't mean we can't be there very, very quickly. As soon as we start to see some interest rate relief, which we haven't seen for 3 years, then, it could get back to that point. So this is part of being a sophisticated buyer. I'll use 2 personal examples recently. So we just closed on a property 2 weeks ago, and we purchased it all cash, and we made an aggressive offer on it, but we purchased where we were able to acquire it. And this is a house that's been listed for 2 years. This is out here locally where we're at, and something we had been underwriting for a long time, but we threw out a lowball offer, and with no contingencies, closed in 2 weeks cash. Like I didn't even have I had an inspection on the house, but the closing was not contingent upon the inspection. I put a large earnest money down. And so I did not have an appraisal on the house. We had an inspection, but again, the sale wasn't contingent on the inspection. I could not walk away from that and get my earnest money back. So we closed on the deal, but like we went in knowing that we didn't have any contingencies. Another unfavorable example is when we put a property under contract last year that we've been negotiating for a while. And my broker, this is a broker that I've worked with for many, many years. We missed the pre-approval date. We actually had to provide, financing approval by 3 days of going under contract. And I was busy. I was relying on my broker. We had it. We just didn't provide it to the seller. Well, guess what? We literally lost our earnest money, and we lost the deal because that seller, we violated the contract, and this was a unfortunate situation, but that seller went and sold to another party, for a higher price point because he just so happened to get an offer at that timing, and we missed the pre-approval date. So like those things happen, right? This is business and this is transactional. Not all sellers are, friendly during transactions.
They're not your best friend out there.
But this is learn. You live and you learn. Don't rely 100% on other people. This is your investments. Take the accountability to understand the contract, understand what you're investing in, and make smart moves.
Yep. So if you want to see some properties that you can acquire, you can head on over to renttoretirement.com. That's at renttoretirement.com. You can see everything. You can schedule a call with us, and we can help you through kind of figuring out what properties are going to align with your investing, with your investing goals. And don't forget, if you have any questions you want us to answer in future episodes, email them to podcast@renttoretirement.com. Or if you want to come on here and tell your story about your journey as an investor to help inspire those who, are sitting on the fence, thinking, man, interest rates are going to go down someday, prices are going to come down someday, and they've been wrong for a long time. If you want to come and inspire some people, email podcast@renttoretirement.com, and we'll schedule a time to talk with you. And just so you know, not saying that Zach and I hang around and answer some questions for you after the interview, but Zach and I tend to hang around and answer some questions for you after the interview. If you want to talk about your portfolio, again, email podcast@renttoretirement.com. Really appreciate the time y'all spent educating yourselves today. Talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.